Services Technologies, Nancy Vukovich from Intel, and Richard Schultz of University of Pittsburgh. And you probably can't read that now that we've gone through all this, but it's www.caregiving.org and http:// United Health Group, UnitedHealthGroup.com/main/newsroom.aspx. And I'll just go over that one because that one's so long and complicated. UnitedHealthGroup.com/main/newsroom.aspx. And you can download the whole study from either of those websites. So thank you, and Happy New Year.
Gail, thank you for an elegant study, and it's a very thoughtful presentation. In fact, one of the things we wanted to do was to make it even easier. As Gail advised us, make the technology simpler. So, on your behalf, following the completion of our panel at the back of the room, both Steve as well as Natalie will have one of these for you, where you can take the whole study and take a look at it yourself. Again, you told us, make it easy. There's even more for you this afternoon, and I'm going to turn things right now to Lori Olof to describe her impressions about the opportunities within this space. Lori?
I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I spent 30 years in the technology industry, actually more than 30 years in the technology industry in IT. And following that, I became certified as a long-term care ombudsman for nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and certified in geriatric care management at the University of Florida. And while I was doing this certification process, I began to look into technology for aging in your own home. And what I realized was that there was a very limited perspective about that marketplace. And I started to look into it. I published a market overview that you can download from my website. It's free, and it will show you the various categories of the market that I'm going to talk to you about in about 2 seconds. And also a report I've written on chronic disease management and the possible use of technology to more effectively manage chronic diseases in older people. I describe this market in general as a market that's like e-commerce in 1999. And if those of you who have been around the tech industry think about e-commerce in 1999, what you'll think about in that context is an industry in which the vendors were fragmented, the problem wasn't well defined, people didn't necessarily think they actually needed online ordering of anything. In fact, paper purchase orders were still the norm in 1999. And then if you look like 3 or 4 years later and you look what happened to paper processing of orders for consumers in particular, and ultimately for companies, you see that paper went the way of the dodo bird in terms of commerce. And what is going to happen in this industry within 4 or 5 years, I believe, is the technology solutions are going to come together. They're going to solve a problem that's clear, well understood, priced appropriately, and available to the people who need it. So with that said, I'm going to hopefully get to the next slide. So this slide is intended to depict something that I can describe much more briefly than by reading the slide. But basically it shows that there's a growth rate in the cost of assisted living. I believe it's $51,000 a year by 2015. I believe it also says that the numbers of seniors are going to grow to be approximately 55 million, 65 plus by the year 2020. And it shows the growth rate in the number of women who are in the caregiving age range of 25 to 44. And it shows that the growth rate of the number of women who in fact do much of the certified nursing assistants, personal care aides, and all of the type of people who can help us as we get to our latest years, the growth rate in that number of women does not nearly keep pace with the growth rate in the population. Not to mention the cost of assisted living, which is already prohibitive for much of the population and typically not compensated by any form of Medicare or other insurance. So if you take that thought, that is the framework and context of the market that I'm going to be describing to you, which I believe, in fact, is in a puzzle paradigm. And the reason it's in a puzzle paradigm is all 4 pieces of this puzzle are required in order to age successfully. If you leave one out, you end up with a person who runs the risk of depression. If they run the risk of depression, they possibly stop taking care of themselves. If they don't take care of themselves, well, we know what happens with all of that. So all 4 categories are required, and now I'm going to go through just what's in the various categories. So I'm not going to talk about any specific technologies today because we don't have really enough time to do that. But in terms of communication and engagement technologies, which is the category in the upper left, that's the category in which we have email, chat, video calls, cell phones, PCs, Macs, tablets, and the most transformative technology of all that's occurred in the past few years, which I believe is Skype, or Skype-like technologies. I won't say Skype itself is transformative. It's Skype-like things. And I think one of the most transformative technologies about to affect our lives in terms of the world of older people will be gesture-based interactions, which are not just going to come from Microsoft. They're going to come from people who apply that interface. But that's the communication and engagement. How do we get engaged with outside world? Because as we just heard before, the statistic that says only 26% of the 65-plus population has broadband in the home. And I would argue without broadband, there's no Skype video, okay? Without broadband, you're unlikely to spend a lot of time finding the 62,000 health-related websites that are out there that could help you with your chronic disease. So it's great that we send email in the older population. It's great that we do a few things with a computer, but bottom line is what we really need to be doing with the computer is everything you can see at CES in the way of video and the ability to actually interact in real time with other people. So that's the communication and engagement category. Below that, you'll see the health and wellness category. That's where telehealth comes in, medication dispensing and reminders, which we haven't seen a whole lot of in the past day, chronic disease management, fitness, that would include cognitive fitness as well as physical fitness technologies, and everything related to health. The upper right, you see safety and security. That includes home security, which I would argue is the #1 aging in place technology. If people, in fact, don't have a home alarm system, then all of the other technologies are actually worthless because they're at risk of fire, of flood, of leaving the sink on, the stove on, the house burning down, or burglars. Then comes personal emergency response devices, which today are, for the most part, limited to a 600-foot maximum range of the home, but in fact will become mobile. Some are already becoming mobile, and that is also followed by fall detection technology, which in and of itself should really be part of a fall prevention program. You can read a lot on the internet about fall prevention, very little about finding you on the floor once you've actually fallen, which people are at great risk of in their later years. And then home monitoring technology, passive home monitoring, which I believe at some point is going to merge with chronic disease monitoring. But passive home monitoring is activity monitoring, that sensor-based technology to help detect whether you've in fact gone in to the kitchen and not come out. The bottom right-hand corner is the missing link, I think, for successfully aging in your own home. It's the technologies used to help you leave a legacy of information about your families to your children and your grandchildren. It's the ability to continue to learn new things and contribute to society. And we know that people who continue to learn new things stay engaged with the world. And so I believe, and online learning, which used to be called distance learning, and now is e-learning or online learning, whatever you want to call it now, it is a great way to engage people in society for a much longer period of time. Volunteering, working from home, all of those are the kinds of things that keep us viable in our later years. And we need to be talking a lot more about the technologies that enable doing that. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So how large is the market for technology for aging in place? Well, I've sized it by rolling up a number of other markets at $20 billion by the year 2020. I've suggested that it's in the sort of $2 billion range today. But it's a rather narrow view, what I've just described to you about the potential of technology for aging in place. And by the way, one thing I didn't mention, I showed in the middle of that prior diagram a circle or an oval about caregiving. And I believe caregiving and caregivers overlay the relationships that are enabled by technology for aging in place. So I describe technology for aging in place as enabling a relationship triangle of older people, the families who care about them and care for them, and the professionals, including doctors, who serve their needs, and how to park our cars. If you add all of those technologies together, we're talking well beyond $20 billion by the year 2020. And with that, that's my contact information. Be happy to talk to any